in Scorpio on June 5th. This is going to be a very transformative event for 2020, of course. Eclipses are always very transformative. And this is a lunar eclipse. It's a penumbral lunar eclipse, which means it's pretty wide orb. We're going to have another lunar eclipse the following month, another wide orb penumbral eclipse in Sagittarius. But this one is going to be in Scorpio. Bring up the chart here. And you can see the chart. This is June the 5th, 2020. And we have it here at 2125 of Scorpio, Jyeshta Nakshatra. And we have, the sun here at 21 of Taurus. This is like the exact moment. And you can see that it's an eclipse because whenever the sun gets close to one of the nodes, that's when we have the eclipse month. Now you can see, here's how you can tell that it's a wide orb, because you can see that the sun is about 14 degrees away from the node. So that means by the time we have the solar eclipse 2 weeks from June 5th, it's going to be an exact, really powerful solar eclipse. Many times when you have the exact eclipses, which means that the sun is right on the node when the eclipse happens, which again, if you just count forward 15 days, this is going to be at about 6 degrees of Gemini, and Rahu is like 5. So it's going to be an exact conjunction of the sun with the node, which literally means the Earth, sun, and the ecliptic point. So when you see that exact solar eclipse, you know that it's going to usually be sandwiched almost all the time, or all the time sandwiched between two wide penumbral lunar eclipses, right? So we have a wide orb here at about 14 degrees. And then next month, we also have a wide orb lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So just a little astronomical orientation there so that you can understand. I see some people showed up. I'll say hi to some people. Jay Saka, good vibes. Good morning. Good morning. Huh? It's not morning. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. Isn't it that time everywhere in the world? No. Witty Mystic says hello. Hello. Dave Cherkusky. I know you. Namaste, my friend. Linda Delgado, greetings from Colorado. Hello. Diana, I have Jyeshta. I'm super thrilled to eclipse stuff out of my life. Oh, okay. Lexi Love, what's up, Sam? You're looking at it. Good evening, everyone. Brittany, Nicole Maxey. She's right down the street somewhere in San Diego, enjoying this beautiful weather. Dorian Dean, thank goddess. Let's die to live, shall we? More meditation is the cure. Okay. Sherry LaRosa, hi. Monique Wells, hi, Sam. As we speak, there's LA riots. Yep. Judith, good morning from Australia. Taylor, greetings from Sedona. All right. Taylor's going to be in my course here soon, I think. Last week. Bhavana Nair, it's my country, 5:04 a.m. Patricia Berger, wow, busy day. Patricia Berg says, busy day for you, Sam. Amazing. I know. Can you believe it? Bala B. Hi, Sam. There's so many. Okay, it just keeps going. Hello. Let me see. Karuna. I see Karuna Ramona Sabnani. Always good to see you. And what else? Who do we have? Oh, got to put one up there with her hands. There she is. And Lisa Rosa. Got to say hi to Amy Eager. I don't know. Is it Eager or EJ? Jeanette Altman. Mahina, good to see people. So there's riots, all kinds of stuff going on right now. So, literally I'm doing this update, of course, in the context of a lot of social upheaval. And just to start with a little bit of that, it was predicted, at least, you can go back and watch when I did a video of Mars and Aquarius. on my Facebook, I'm sorry, on my YouTube channel. It's probably on Facebook as well. And Mars leaving Capricorn, which happened early May, like May 5th or so, was going to be the beginning of some, at least if not social unrest like this, just restlessness. I said some social restlessness because Mars will be going into Aquarius, and there's going to be this social outburst as well. And we're seeing it in full force. This is also a good lesson in showing that, Mars is the ruler of this eclipse in Scorpio. And I got to say hi to Katie Monroe. Hi, Katie. Nice to see you after all these years. Glad you're still hanging in there and doing it. So this Mars going into Aquarius has been very transformative. And as soon as Mars started going into Aquarius in early May, it went in May 5th, but we started really seeing a lot of the social restlessness become a lot more. Amy says long E. That means eager. Okay. But we started to see a lot of the social unrest and the restlessness to break the curfews, break the quarantines and stuff, and really get even more outspoken. Like, for example, people showing up with AK-47s at the Capitol building because they don't want to wear masks and they are tired of the lockdown. And we started seeing a lot of this stuff happen as Mars went into Aquarius, a lot more of that acting out and a lot more restlessness. And of course, we've just seen much more of a return to getting back to at least starting to work back into opening up after the COVID lockdown. And again, more frustration with each other as well. I've seen a lot of people just the intolerance is what to me is frustrating, frankly. People, I got to prove everybody else wrong or got to do this. And, I play my part in it for sure. But again, I've talked a little bit about that. I'm not going to get too into it here, but some of it is definitely fueling the fire. And again, I've been talking quite a bit about the conspiracy theories, the ideas that, we can see that there's a lot of potential for being taken advantage of with the government and with the, with the social structures and with all of that. But, so we're on edge a little bit, but we also have to not be, again, playing into letting our imagination run away with this. Again, I recently did a video on conspiracy theory, like the difference between a conspiracy theory and believing in a scenario that hasn't happened yet, and using your rational mind to acknowledge what's going on and to really look at it and be hyper vigilant. So again, one is staying with the facts. Again, staying with the facts doesn't mean believing in some and spinning out on some conspiracy theory that hasn't happened, which means that all of these things have been conspired. And like, for example, that the COVID was cooked up by the group of all of the people that are now going to do this so they can do this to us. Again, that's going too far. There's no proof for any of that. We don't know that. That doesn't mean there aren't very dangerous and scary situations politically, culturally, that we absolutely have to be aware of. And they're numerous. In the midst of it, we have to not be attacking each other, fighting with each other, arguing with each other, saying, no, my version of all of this stuff that none of us really know for sure is the only one that's right. My version is the only way to look at it. And if you don't see it, you're the spawn of hell too. You're just as bad. Or no, it's my version. And again, this is the thing that I've seen with Mars going into Aquarius as much as anything else, is too much certainty, frustration, opinions, and not listening to each other, because we all have the same desire. We all want to live in the same world where we don't want to be, dominated and forced to stay in our home. And we don't want half the population that, dying of a disease, but we also don't want to be, We don't want the solution to be worse than the cure, which means we can't stay locked in our house forever. We can't accept just like mandatory draconian vaccinations. But again, at the same time, we're so far away from that happening, just because maybe it's been theorized by some people that that would be a good thing. Well, most of us don't agree with that. So let's just remember that instead of spin out and go crazy. If it ever starts to get towards something like that, we'll talk about it. But again, losing the forest for the trees, losing the bigger picture and what we share in common. Again, that's the Aquarius part of the equation. The Aquarius part is we're all in it together. That's what Aquarius is. Mars is there, and instead of remembering what we're all in together, we're like, no, my version of what we're in together is the right one, right? So we can just spin out on this kind of stuff and lose our way. So this is I say this just as a backdrop because, again, Mars is the ruler of this eclipse in Scorpio. And again, it's also opposite the sun in Taurus. And as we're seeing right now, as I record this on May 30th, right now we're seeing this social uprising based on race in the US. We see that. Again, we're not seeing that all around the world, but there's certainly tensions all around the world about things like the COVID is still going on. Other stress points around the world are also challenging people to implement the worldview that they want to see. And we're all a little bit scared and paranoid and wondering what it's going to be. But we have to remember that this full moon is happening in the midst of the Taurus cycle. So again, we also have to remember that the sun is where the the sun is like the focal point of the eclipse. Okay, and the sun as the focal point of the eclipse shows the real cycle that we're working on now. Even though it's a Scorpio full moon, the real lesson right now is the Taurus lesson, which is to stabilize and try to bring peace, bring value, bring connection to each other individually. You can see that what's boiling over now, for example, around the world, but even interpersonally, we're all in it in the same way, in that, again, if we just look at it from the Taurus perspective, what we're really working on right now is respect, is how to establish a deeper and more thoughtful paradigm of respect for each other and a world structure that we can all get behind, where people and cultures of the world are respected, where, again, that includes our family, our tribe, our community, and trying to create that and trying to return to a life of, quote, what's normal or what's happy or peaceful, is really the underlying, that's really the underlying lesson right now. And so within that, we have seen, frustrations boiling over because of, again, people's different version of what they think is going to return us to a stable, happy world where we have enough money, we have enough resources. Again, one of the things that's happened, and what I've noticed is, we can get too, in my opinion, we can get too focused, for example, with the COVID, because this is the thing that's dominating the world. We can get too focused on one part of it. And of course, we had to get focused on the health part of it for a couple months, which means people could be dying all over the place and we need to stay home and stop, which we obviously did. It's hard to think that we could have underestimated it when we all just stayed home for 2.5 months. But the approach that you can't just approach it as if it's only a health, that it's only the possibility of, dying from this illness or overrunning the hospitals or whatever. There's a whole financial thing about it. The US just floated about $6 trillion worth of capital. We just invented it out of nothing. we've been doing this all around the world, just inventing money out of nothing. I mean, if fiat capital was nothing before, what is it now? At some point, everything could collapse if we don't get back to something that's reasonable. Again, and not to mention things like people aren't getting normal medical procedures. People are, and again, I'm not even just talking about businesses. There's always a risk reward with everything. But again, so the pressure and the tension and the stress between how do we create the stable world that is going to be going forward based on where we've been? How do we balance that with making sure everybody is taken care of? Like making sure that we don't go back too early and everybody gets sick again, or we have new waves, or whatever it is that we're doing. So I'm saying this because this is the backdrop right now where this is happening. It's happening still within a Taurus cycle. You want to understand it's happening within the Taurus cycle, okay? So we're moving up toward this eclipse. But by the way, we also have it happening with this Venus retrograde, right? So Venus, the ruler of Taurus, is retrograde up here. And this is, of course, making us very much reflect on our relationships, like personal relationships, how we feel respected and appreciated, how we don't, where we don't, how we're valuing each other as individuals, collectively, all of that stuff. We're seeing, very clearly with this full, with this Taurus cycle, and especially with Venus going retrograde here. Now you can see as we get near this full moon and this eclipse that Venus and the sun are very close, within a couple degrees, which means that Venus is retrograde and combust at this time. So when the planet is retrograde and combust, it's closer to Earth than at any other time. And between now, as I record this on May 30th, and the time of the eclipse on June 5th, Venus is going to pass right in between the sun and the Earth. It's going to be closer to the Earth than it ever is. Again, this is when it's retrograde and combust. I'll run this back a few days. You can see it's exact here on the 3rd, but right now we're here. Right now we're here. Venus is 1541 going backwards. I'm sorry, Venus is 21 going backwards, 2153, and Sun is 1541. If we go forward, you see within a couple days, that's exact, 19 and 19. So that's when Venus is closest to the Earth than at any other time. It's in between us and the Sun. I expect that we're going to keep seeing some version of this social unrest that we're seeing in the US for a few days. I hope things start to scale down. But there's a lot of danger right now in things escalating, continually escalating, as frustrations about race relations in the US are boiling over to a point where we can't just keep acting like it's just acceptable to watch someone murdered right in front of us, choked out. This was the thing that happened. I think it's news of the world by now that we've seen this disgusting act that took place. Revolting, of someone just literally handcuffed, hands behind the back, someone just on his knee, with his knee on his neck, suffocating the person to death right in front of a group of people, shouting at these police officers to stop, and they just wouldn't. The absolute audacity and with, feeling like he could, like there was impunity to do this. Like, oh yeah, I'm a cop. I can do what I want. What? Go ahead and videotape it. Yeah, this person has now stopped moving. He's been begging for his life, begging to breathe, and I'm just not going to let him. And the cops aren't doing anything to let it happen either. It's absolutely paradigm shifting. Let's hope. Let's hope it really does actually change something somehow. But now we're seeing the aftermath of that, where it's like, at what point do you stop? At what point do you stop being complicit? Sorry, wait a second. With something, and let me see something here. Here's a visual. I want to bring this up. This is a visual that I found, which is really which is really significant of this event. You see this thing, why can't you protest peacefully as you see things being burned, right? And then it says, no, not like this. Here's peaceful protest, Black Lives Matter. No, not like this. NFL players kneeling. These are all the protests. Here's LeBron James. No, not like that. Don't say anything after a basketball game. Don't protest that way. Here's someone at an award show. No, don't do that. Here's Kobe Bryant. I can't breathe. No, don't do that. Don't put those. I don't want to see that in basketball. How about this? No, not like that. No. So again, why can't you protest peacefully? Because we have been. They have been. That's all they've been doing. And again, the boiling point is that we're in this Taurus cycle with Venus retrograde. And by the way, you should see this as an iteration of Venus retrograde as well. You always have to understand that retrograde planets are disruptive. They're going to disrupt whatever it was that was moving forward or what we thought was going on. A retrograde planet, Venus, or again, we also have Saturn and Jupiter retrograde, but the Venus retrograde is disrupting what we thought was respect. We thought we had reached a certain level here and there, or whatever disrespect or whatever, hidden wound or hidden agenda is under there is going to get worked on at that time. We're going to see it come out. And this is, being shown now with this event and this as a flashpoint for trying to bring things back to a level of respect, to bring things back to a place of, where we are living in a world that we want to live in. And again, there's so many toxic polarities in the world right now with politics and everything else. But as we look at this eclipse, we want to see that context on a social context. Now, again, in a personal context, you may see these things playing out as well in your life. I know for myself, there's a lot of things going on. This Mars in Aquarius is also about using the power that you have to, unite people around a common vision, a common purpose, to make the world a better place based on your enthusiasm and the courage to do that. I've seen the enthusiasm, for example, of many of my students that have recently even graduated from my certification course, and they're enthusiastic and excited about creating the new world, which we're also doing. We can never lose sight of what's also happening. Again, bringing greater respect and joy and clarity with this Venus retrograde in Taurus. There's also so much beauty happening now as things are shifting and things are changing. We could see so much opportunity for a higher evolution happening. And, just feeling good about returning to life the way we, I should say the way we want to return to it. We're seeing all of that play out. Often in these forecasts, I might talk about some of the intense social things that happen. But in our personal lives, day to day, there's also great unfoldings happening where, especially this Mars and Aquarius, really showing up to stand for something in a way that feels right and feels good and feels righteous. And again, the thing to do is don't turn allies into enemies because of your need to be right, because of your need to win the argument, and your need to make sure that your theory is the only one that's possible and everybody else is just stupid and sheeple and all of that. You want the same world they want. We all want the same thing. We all want a world where there's freedom, autonomy, health, and we all agree that there are things that just simply do not take us there. And rather than fight over whose unfounded opinion is right, we need to remember the bigger picture again, which is the Aquarius. The big thing I always remember with Aquarius is not to turn allies into enemies, but we can turn enemies into allies. And again, this is underneath it all, very important in the in the eclipse in Scorpio as well, because it's much more of an emotional and psychological sort of transformation that's happening. Whereas Taurus is, again, that inner value set and our value system. Again, I talked about it collectively, but personally, it's your personal values and what you're willing to do in order to make sure that those personal values are reflective of your deserving of respect and dignity. With Venus retrograde there in Taurus, it's also a time for you to be introspecting about how much you actually value others. Of course, we're always focused on our own level of respect and how much people appreciate us, talking about like relationships or people in our life. But now's the time to really introspect and get real about how much respect do you also give? How much is the respect that you return that returns to you based on how much you give? We always feel our feelings hurt and feel bad when we're not appreciated. How much is that a circle? How much is that karma? Or does karma work for everybody else except you? Everybody else gets the karma they deserve, but you never did anything wrong. It's just people being mean or whatever. This Venus retrograde is reversing that as well. It's reversing, it's showing you the truth. Look at what's showing up in your life as well, with the ones that in your mind you're convinced that they never appreciated you or this or that, or like with the family or whatever the buttons are, whatever the things are in your mind that you run over about the big scenarios, the same ones that where nobody appreciates you or whatever, that you run over in your mind. Notice, do you do the same things or similar things or have anything to do with it? Or what happens when you don't feel appreciated? And again, I didn't say what happens when you're not appreciated. I said what happens when you don't feel appreciated. They're different things, by the way. If you didn't know, they are. You not feeling appreciated and someone not appreciating you, they're not the same thing. One is our feelings. The other is reality. I mean, the ultimate reality, like maybe someone didn't intend something, but we get our feelings hurt and we assign a motive and then we do something. What happens when you do something because your feelings were hurt? Are you still respectful? Are you treating others the way you want to be treated as well? And again, I'm asking the questions and saying these are the scenarios that are coming up on a personal level and on the collective level, because we can elevate this and escalate this to the collective as well. Everything I've been saying about culture still applies. We're looking at this also on the collective level. Our politics, our culture, our police force, is this respect being shown? Is this the world we want to live in and inhabit? Again, you can look at that protest, that image I brought up. Don't protest this way. Why are you so violently protesting? Okay, again, this is how we can feel on a personal level as well, right? We can feel like, well, nobody listens unless I blow up. If I make a request quietly, or I say, look, don't do this and don't do this. Maybe you have the experience. I've definitely had the experience before where sometimes people don't listen until you blow up. If you're trying to just be polite about it, you're trying to just, again, that graphic that I brought up about why don't you protest peacefully, but not like this, not like this, not like this. That protest peacefully is a lot of that Taurus energy where it's like, can I please be respected? That's very Venus. Can I please be respected? Okay, I'm trying to tell you nicely, It doesn't work. And then eventually we explode. This is why Scorpio is the opposite point from Taurus. This is just a basic astrological principle that the opposite sign helps us to complete the other one. Scorpio is like the harmonizing point of Taurus. We never are truly stable and solid in anything until we've been able to navigate all of the uncertainty, intensity, all of the, all the imagined fears and all of the things that could undermine our stability. We never really have stability until we've navigated all of that Scorpio energy. And so again, Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and it's our imagined fears in a simple way, but it's really where we're trying to investigate those things that are hidden just beneath our comfort zone, just beneath that comfort zone of Taurus, there's all of the stuff underneath that maybe we've been ignoring, sort of papering over because we want everything to be stable. Well, Scorpio is opposite that, which is aware of all of those things that we're not talking about, aware of all of that hidden energy, all that hidden dangerous energy, all of that stuff that we've been trying to keep together in Taurus. Scorpio is ready to say, hell with it. I'm ready to blow this thing up. But again, often with Scorpio, it's because we're triggered and there's a lot of imagined fears there, because Scorpio is a sign of vulnerability. It's that sign of vulnerability where the moon is debilitated. And it's in the sign of debilitation because, and again, it's exalted in Taurus, it's debilitated in Scorpio. This is a very much an axis of the moon's polarity. The moon is the most stable in Taurus, and we just had the new moon in Taurus. So we had the new moon in Taurus where it's the most stable. The way the cycles work, the new moon in Taurus is where it's the most stable. 15 days later, we have to test that stability. Well, how stable are you really? Are you really stable? Can it withstand this? If it can't, then all of that instability and uncertainty of Scorpio will break the Taurus paradigm. We can use the example of the protests. How stable is your country? How stable is your police force? How much security and safety and stability do you really have? A couple protests for a few nights and burning things, and now all of a sudden, how much stability is really there? How much power do they really have? How much control do they really have? It's this paradigm between that stability and the instability. So the thing we have to realize as we get closer to this full moon and this eclipse is that there's enormous potential here simply because it's in this axis where the moon is very potent. Now, one of the things about the moon in Scorpio, even though it's in the debilitated state, because it's where those qualities of Scorpio tend to make our mind kind of run away with us. Again, those imagined fears and that vulnerability can be very good for a lot of areas of life, like the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, K2, the South Node. They do very well in Scorpio, and that intensity of Scorpio becomes really transformative very easily. But other planets, that intensity is unsettling, like with the moon, because the moon is the part of us that just wants to feel good, literally, and be happy and feel stable. That's why it's exalted in Taurus. So it's the instability, the uncertainty, the drama, the triggering that Scorpio can bring up that we need to be careful of when it's in Scorpio. But again, all of that energy and all of that intensity is just potential. You have to see this in everything astrological, that every interpretation is just one quality of a potential. It's all potentiality, like everything else. And so the moon in Scorpio, it just means that the potentiality is mostly wired at first toward that intensity. And when the moon gets there, when the mind is there, it's unsettling. But then again, if you're someone who has a spiritual practice, if you're someone who has, literally who has a meditation practice, a spiritual practice, is used to riding those waves of intensity and going deeper, all of that passion and all of that, even, sort of triggering or, even what could be negative, is just a lot of passion and a lot of power to be channeled into deeper devotion, mainly. Because one of the main qualities of Scorpio in the highest sense is it's a very devotional sign, very devotional, because it's a water sign, very connected to the heart. And the devotional state means that it's, we have to take the emotions deeper, and it's a sign of depth and emotional depth. But when we spin out in Scorpio, it's because we're not in the depth. The Scorpio energy, a planet in Scorpio, if that's a person's ascendant or whatever it is, the moon there, they wind up staying in the kind of emotional mind and the emotional desire mind. So when Scorpio is stuck in the desires of the world and the emotions caused by the desires, this is where emotions come from desires. Devotion comes from peace and stillness and dharma. So when we're hanging out in all of our unmet desires, unfulfilled desires, and the triggering and the vulnerability that we're going to lose this thing that we think is going to make us happy, and now we're frustrated and angry because this thing or this person that was going to make us happy is now might go away, and we get all triggered like that. This, again, that's not the ultimate state of anything. That's an incomplete stage of evolution of the moon and Scorpio in this sense. But when we're connected to something deeper like devotion, and our whole life isn't defined by this fear of losing external things, then there's enormous devotion there. And we can go into our spiritual teachings, our gurus, our practices. Scorpio is very dedicated, very devoted, especially with good teachings. It's really necessary that Scorpio people have pure teachings, sattvic teachings, teachings that are elevated. So this is a time to connect to elevated dharmic teachings, elevated pure teachings from the great masters, the great wisdom traditions. Again, we can say that's always the case, but with Scorpio especially, it's one of these signs where you absolutely need to have that, because Scorpio is always looking for a higher meaning or a deeper meaning or a higher purpose, a sort of philosophy. But Scorpio energy can really spin out on all these dark teachings. You know, I call it like romancing the darkness. It's like, oh, I'm just like romanticizing all the pain. Oh, I'm so poor me. It's so and you know, but I just love it. You know, I love that I'm so mysterious and dark, and you know, good. Okay, there's certainly something to it, but it can go too much. And we all have that. I mean, and again, it's not just Scorpio energy. There's a lot of things that bring that out. But we need to be careful spinning out on dark solutions, dark fantasies. It is definitely a sign of conspiratorial thinking, conspiracy theories. What does it really mean? Aha, you really meant that. That's what it really is. I figured it out, you know, and all this stuff, which it's better to take that natural investigative, I'm going to figure it out mind and try to figure out the truth of who we really are. And that doesn't mean figure out how all this works and everybody and everything that's trying to control us and turn us into drones or whatever. It means the nature of the self. So when Scorpio gets pure teachings, that Scorpio energy is connected to dharmic teachings. They'll do the practices, they'll do the work, and they'll feel that devotion, and they'll feel that difference between all of that emotional triggering and all of that devotion. Again, all the water signs have that quality because they feel it deeply in the heart. And there's such a qualitative difference between spinning out on all that triggering and connecting to purity in the heart. It's a different universe. And again, Scorpio is great at once they get a good teaching and they'll really practice it, and it will really elevate. So these are a few things to really be doing now as we get closer to this eclipse in Scorpio, is to really evaluate your teachings. What is it that you really believe? What is it that you're certain is true? What is it that you're certain is real? And how does that feeling in you? And are you sure that it's real? Or is that just your kind of paranoid mind? Like, okay, again, connecting to pure teachings, which are driven by pure practices and real practices, that's dharma. And Scorpio is great for putting those things into practice. By the way, I'm not just saying Scorpios. We're talking about planets in that sign. We're talking about that energy. And now, because we're having an eclipse there, this is a collective association that we're all kind of living right now. We're all living this. And, that's what we can see about that. If you have a few questions, you can do that. I want to, and I might answer them, I might not. But you've also seen something scrolling there at the bottom of your of your page about it's a web class that I taught. I actually taught it last year, and it's on the lunar nodes, where I talked about when the nodes went into Gemini, when Rahu went into Gemini, Ketu went into Sagittarius. And this has been a huge transition. This eclipse cycle is really a great time to go back and revisit this entire Rahu and Ketu in Gemini and Sagittarius. And you'll see that I recorded this last year, but you might be pretty blown away by what I said would happen last year and how it's really played out. It's definitely something where what I've been talking about, what I started talking about then, is it was going to be that we were going to really see the truth behind the way things are. And this is another version of really seeing the truth. That doesn't mean the truth that, it means the truth of the society that we have, of our own identity, of our own reality, of how we're all processing things. To you, that might mean it's a higher truth behind who's really running the show or whatever it might be. But this Gemini is very much, and Rahu in Gemini has kind of, taken the chessboard and thrown all the pieces up in the air at this point. And we're just grappling for what's really going on. Like, it's very hard to filter through the explosion of data and information. But we have seen beneath the veil in many different ways. These latest things I'm talking about now, for example, as we try to return to a post-COVID world where we were all on lockdown for a couple months, again, we're seeing our collective reality is we don't know what's going on, but that's the real truth. So again, people will often think, well, how can you say it's showing us the real truth when none of us seem to know what the truth is? Yes, that is the truth. That is the real truth. The real truth is, again, opportunity for you to introspect. This has been that way the whole time. None of us really know how all this works in a very cosmic metaphysical sense. You don't know how this universe got here. You don't know how this world got here. You certainly don't know how all of the power structures that run your life, you don't know how any of them really work. You have ideas. We all have ideas. We have our theories, and we can see how a lot of it works. But even just in general, this is why there's so much stress, I think, in modern life. Life earlier was much easier. It was much less stressful in one sense. Now, again, we didn't live as longer. There were a lot of other problems they had. But they lived very close to the cycles of nature, the rhythms of nature. The things they were surrounded with were things that they really understood. But again, they were very vulnerable because they didn't have modern health and all kinds of things. But they had like water, food, animals, all the stuff that was around them. They understood it. Now we're surrounded. Even right now, you're sitting in your house. It's the craziest thing. I'm sitting here in my room. You're sitting there where you are, wherever the hell that is, watching me. And you have no idea how any of this is happening. Neither do I. We just take it for granted now. Okay, now we'll do this. If I would have told you this 20 years ago, that one day you're going to sit in your house and some dude is going to sit there and you'll just be able to turn on this box that's like a TV and have access in real time to someone, especially someone talking about the stuff I'm talking about right now, you would have probably been like, yeah, right, that's really going to happen. So aside from the ideas that we have access to, just the technology and all of the things that we're surrounded by, we don't really know how any of it works. And that's the truth. We certainly also don't understand how all the governments are working, how all this stuff is working. We have no idea, like even just the ideas, especially now that are flying around. We scratch our head like, how can people believe this kind of stuff? Everybody is saying that. People are in their very narrow niches. Again, Republican, Democrat, believe this, believe that, this, that. And we're almost like, how in the world, like everybody, the one thing we can agree on is the world is insane. The ideas are just absolutely crazy. And we have no idea what's going on, where things are going. but I will offer to you that we never really have. The reason everything is so shattering is because we've been under the illusion that we did. But guess what? You never did. None of us ever did. So it's pretty crazy. So anyway, I talked about that a lot in the or at least I talked about that the shift of Rahu into Gemini and Ketu into Sagittarius. It's free. So you can go there at rahuketu2020.com and go ahead and do that. But so just looking here, and so Taylor says, can you message me a link to your certification class? I never got an email. I really want to begin. Yeah, if you're on my email list, I'll definitely do that, but I'll do it anyway. If we're not friends on Facebook, I'll look for you, because I've seen you before, and I think I got a message from you before, but I'll make sure to do that. So now Sudeep says, is a civil war upon us? Well, again, you know what? And you mean a hot war. You mean a hot shooting war. I hope not. I really hope not. I was just talking earlier today with people, like, I hope right now I hope the tensions de-escalate. But look, a few months ago, before COVID exploded, everybody was realizing and thinking and worried that what was really going to happen was like a hot war was going to break out, because we had these same placements that happened during 9/11 with explosive reality-shaping events and reality-altering events. And at the time, there was all this tension with China, with Iran. Look, there's so many hotspots in the world. Anything could happen. Again, and I don't know any astrologers that really predicted literally that it would be a COVID, that it would be this kind of thing that would happen. But all of us predicted that this was going to be just like nothing we've seen before. Like some singularity type of event or events were going to happen that was going to completely shift. All of us saw it. After that eclipse in December in Mulla, it was very clear that we were going to have a huge, and again, because the world is so dangerous, we thought it might be another huge terrorist event or assassination. This is always what I think with Mulla, because I've seen assassinations. But it could be a hot war. It could be anything. It could be a nuclear meltdown, mistake. Anything is possible with this dangerous world we live in. It turned out that it was this COVID, which frankly is one of the most compassionate responses from the Divine Mother I've seen, because it basically just said, everybody go home and be calm and look at what you're doing. Look at what you're doing. These patterns of consumption, this world that you've created is not sustainable. You can't keep eating all the animals and acting as though this world is just yours and flying all over the place and ripping all the oil and just acting like just ravenous, like we're the virus on the earth. And we saw everything get back to this beautiful, peaceful state as soon as human beings started staying home. And so, but we all saw that there was a very transformative and wrenching event that was really coming, like a transformative event. And it showed up like this for the whole world, to hopefully unite the world, an opportunity at least to unite us around certain common causes. Like number one is survival, because now there's a virus unleashed that we don't understand how lethal it is. We don't know what it's going to do yet. So we had to stay home for a couple months. Now we have better data. We're not there anymore. We have better data, and we've shut everything down for so long. We have to now also start transitioning out of the world that, okay, now we're going to be locked in our house forever because there's a flu-like virus that's a nasty virus, but are we now just going to not ever live again? No. So now we're working on putting this back together again, because we have to do that as well. Again, it's just as devastating to like never have a job again or not be able to feed your family. I mean, there are other ways that things can be very catastrophic and devastating if the whole financial system of the world collapsed because we never can ever get back into living again. Is that any better? So again, and again, I'm not being glib about any of it. We should be wearing the mask. We should be doing all of the things. But what I'm saying is that these are the things that we're trying to do right now. Like I said at the beginning, managing like the Taurus area of life, which is we need to make sure to take care of each other, to take care of each other's health, to take care of the earth, but also to have, like I say, like jobs and an economy and a world that we want to live in that's not just based on the fear of catching this illness. Again, and now in the midst of that, we're also seeing it on a personal, collective, social level with this race thing that just came out in the US and in other places as well. Again, I live in the US, so I'm somewhat dominated by what happens here. I try to keep up on other news, but not so much. But the idea about, are we going to have a race war? Let's hope not. Again, I would say let's hope not. And I'm looking right now, and I think right now, hopefully, at least with the protests that are happening now, they start to dial it back. But I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think it's going to. Here's what I think. I don't think the opposition on the other side is strong enough, because I think this is a righteous uprising, and now it's being fueled by people who are just anarchists. Again, I'm not minimizing the outrage, but especially all of just the endless destruction of property, and these things start to escalate, and people that just by nature are wanting to just blow everything up. Again, we have to be very careful right now, and things could escalate much quicker than we think. You could finally have cops just lose it and start shooting, or bring in National Guard and start running over people, or somebody might start really attacking a bunch of cops, and then, man, it could escalate. And then we've lost the message, because the message of what this is about is race relations. And if it starts to get so far away from that because of the backlash against it, then it turns into something else. So anyway, I'm not going to make that prediction, but I think, again, the real thing that we need to be focusing on right now, I think, is really finding. I mean, if your nature is to protest, and again, I'll even come back to where we were at the beginning. Though the first things I talked about, to come back here, is a lot of the reason why we're seeing this play out in this social uprising now. Again, I talked about social uprisings as soon as Mars went into Aquarius. I talked about that. And now, as we're getting close to the full moon in Scorpio, which Mars rules, we're seeing this social uprising as the moon is getting close to the sign Mars rules. So we're definitely seeing this potential right now, and this need to try to make things fair for everybody. Underneath all of this is a lot of pain and struggle. But we can't lose sight of the fact that we're a spiritual being, and the things that we see on the outside world, of course, are there. But underneath it all, you only have control over really one thing, and that's your attention. That's all you have control over. You don't have control over, and again, you can focus that on all kinds of things, including things like protesting, including things like serving others or whatever. You can do that. But you have control of the present moment and your attention and your awareness and your presence, regardless of what's happening in the external world. That never changes. And again, these full moons, these lunation cycles, and especially this Taurus-Scorpio axis, is very much about stabilizing that energy, going deeper into that meditative space. And I got to talk about Jyeshta Nakshatra. So this nakshatra, Jyeshta, it's ruled by Lord Indra, who is the king of the gods. The king is the one who has the power. And this king is One second here. The king is the one who has all the power and who is feels this responsibility to all of the citizens, right? And this responsibility for all of the citizens that's related to the king is a very high and elevated purpose. And it shows where we have, hang on a second, I'll shut this door. 1 second. This door opened up. I have a loud neighbor and have my door open. Anyway, so Lord Indra, there's a great story of Indra, who is, he was the king, and in the Rig Veda especially, Indra was the one who allowed himself to be swallowed by the dragon, or the serpent, a dragon who swallowed or who stole all the water. He actually swallowed all the water and stole it from the earth. And Lord Indra allowed himself to be swallowed. He was swallowed by the demon, or by the dragon, and he went into the belly, and then he took a sword and cut himself out of the belly of the dragon, and in so doing returned all the water to the earth. Very interesting story, right? So it's kind of like the quality of Scorpio, where Scorpio can get swallowed up in, again, intensity and darkness and fear, and like imagined fear, and get, again, kind of swallowed up into the whole thing, just consumed by it. And this kind of, I'm certain, I know this is really what it is. This is the world, this is the reality. I know, and this kind of, and it's really not. It's not necessarily real, but they can get swallowed up in it and then cut themselves out of it. So Scorpio is also the sign where we have the courage, the emotional courage, which is a big part of Scorpio, to allow ourselves also to be swallowed up by that and to not run away from it, again, because we have the courage to stay with it, knowing that we can get out of it later. So again, this is often what Scorpio can wind up doing, is kind of tempting fate and going into things further when they maybe should have turned back, but they're curious, or their emotional courage, they want to try to see, oh, what's going to happen next? I can handle it. I can handle what's coming next, so I'm going to stay with it. But so again, Indra, as the king of the gods, the only way to get the water back was to be swallowed and then cut a hole in the belly to return all of the water. And so again, this is a big, this is a quality of Scorpio where there's this emotional courage, this courage to be heroic. And it's also, again, I say emotionally, but it's also spiritually, this kind of spiritual courage. And that spiritual courage is really what you also have more, where you have more control over, because again, emotional is, emotions are very volatile, they're frustration and all that, and the courage to fight and all that. It's more complicated. Again, with good teachings, when we're connected to Dharma and purpose, that what's emotional courage becomes spiritual courage, and the emotions stop dictating everything you do. And instead, what dictates what you do is what's dharmic and what's truthful. And you have the courage to do that. You have the courage to look at yourself and introspect and not be afraid that you're going to get swallowed up by the darkness, for example. And by the way, we all have Scorpio somewhere. It's not a Scorpio. That's why I always try to unhook people from this idea. Well, what if you're not a Scorpio? What if you don't have a planet in Scorpio? Especially on these lunation cycles. But it doesn't matter. Everybody has Scorpio somewhere. Like I'm a Gemini, so Scorpio is in my 6th house. For a Gemini person, Scorpio is on the 6th house. So that's that quality. For Capricorn, it's the 11th house. So everyone is all 12 signs all 9 planets, all 12 houses. We're all of it together. But we have a lot of biases and preferences and habits and patterns based on the way our individual chart was laid out. But to become enlightened through all of this, we become enlightened by realizing that we are all of it. And that's actually what it looks like, is becoming all 12 signs in their highest, all 12 houses in their highest. So these are universal principles. And the universal principle of Scorpio is transforming that emotional fear and emotional courage and emotional stress into devotion and to spiritual courage. And the way it happens, again, is through good teachings, powerful teachings. And Jyeshta is that part of Scorpio that literally has that like emotional heroism, like the hero. Again, the earlier part of Scorpio is Anuradha, which is very devotional. And the first part is Vishaka. And again, you should realize this is the sidereal zodiac, of course, that we use in Indian astrology. In every text, Rashis, the signs, and the nakshatras are perfectly aligned. So by the time you get to the end of Scorpio, it's this last section, 1640 to 0 of Scorpio is Jyeshta. So this eclipse in this section of it is revealing that emotional heroism and courage to not turn away from the difficult spiritual practices. It's so much easier. You know, the reason nobody meditates is because it's hard. Meditation isn't like, oh, I'm so happy. It's, my God, I'm a lunatic. Let me get out of here. Let me watch TV or something, anything but feel what's actually in my heart and mind. So one of the main things with Scorpio is the courage to go through that and keep going. They say if you're going through hell, keep going. Something like that. If you find yourself going through hell, keep going. You'll get through it. So Jyeshta Nakshatra, very much Lord Indra, the hero, the king, the hero, the one who sacrificed himself, swallowed by the dragon, into the belly of the beast to return the water to the earth. So that's a very powerful symbol and metaphor, to have emotional courage. But emotional courage is really devotion. That's what it is. When I said devotion, that's literally what it is. It's like the emotional courage to stay with the practices and transform consciousness and be still. And the thing that makes that happen is devotion, is love. Because if there's no love there, you won't do it, because we do what we love. We only do what we love. When there's love there, there's no effort. There's no effort. Just like we naturally love our children, or we love our dog, or this. Nobody has to make us do it, because we love it. We love them. So where there's love, there's no effort. And this is what devotion is. Devotion is literally like the love of God or a guru. And again, it's very specific. And again, Scorpio is very much devotional in that regard. So we all are going to be aware of what we're devoted to right now. Again, what are you devoted to? What vision of the world? What have you, as a way to manage your fears and vulnerabilities and to have an answer for those things that are scary for you, those things that could upset your whole structure, which again, Taurus, where we want to see the structure, but now there's, all this vulnerability, which is opposite that. Based on that vulnerability, we have some kind of answer, some kind of teaching, some kind of philosophy, some kind of idea. What's it worth? What are you devoted to? Because you're devoted to that answer. Whatever it is, you're devoted to it. Again, you might be devoted to some dark conspiracy theory about the world and you're certain it's true. That's fine. How's that feel? How's that working out? How hard is it for you to sit and meditate and be still and peaceful and keep that thought in your mind? And yes, I'm meditating because the lizard people aren't going to get me, or whatever it is. Again, what is that? What is the What are your teachings worth? How is that making you feel? That's the quality that Scorpio really teaches us, is how devotional, how much are our teachings worth? Because we'll feel it in our heart. And usually, if we're restless and we can't sit still with them, we need to get some new teachings. And until we do, we're just spinning out. I'll just say it like that. Srimad Bhagavatam could help. Any spiritual text can help. These are religious books, and they're great. Srimad Bhagavatam, the life of Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. But again, there's some of us who are very much, Shaivites as well, the Shiva Purana, or just the stories of Lord Shiva doing those mantras, doing those practices. All of that is, it doesn't matter what you're devoted to. It matters that you're devoted. This is why the easiest is to be devoted to a guru, to an actual teacher who's alive. Hang on a second. Like I've shared before, that my guru is Alma, the hugging saint from India. Again, before I met Alma, I was very much a devotee of Shiva, the god Shiva, and those meditation practices, and that whole Shaivism as a real source of strength. But then when I met Alma, my guru, I saw Shiva right in front of me, alive. Like, wow. And that's how I see her. Other people see her as the Divine Mother, and they see her as cuddly, huggy, smiley. I see that too, but that's not what gets me. That's not what I really see. As soon as she walked in the room the first time, I was like, I didn't even see it as Kali, which is the female version. I was like, that's Shiva. That's not even Kali. As soon as she sat down the first time and closed her eyes, Alma just closes her eyes and it's like, there it is. Wow. Right? So the reason why often we find a guru is because it's easier, because they're in a body like we are. And they're in a body like we are, yet they are not acting like we act. They're in a body like we are, and we expect that they're going to be something like we are or every other person we've met, but then they're not. And again, don't always see it, but if you're around them enough, you see this person is totally different, a total different quality of consciousness. And it's not just words that come out of their mouth. She doesn't even speak English. But again, when there's devotion and when there's love there, and first of all, it draws you back to want to do it. Nobody has to force me to do it. I can't do enough of it. So no one forces you. So again, when there's love, the spiritual practices just flow. So again, that's what devotion is about with your spiritual practices. So this is the biggest thing I would say that could be really revealed at this time. The true revelation that can come with this lunar eclipse, in Scorpio, in Jyeshta Nakshatra, is to really look at the quality of your teachings and what are you really devoted to? What are you really passionate about in your heart that is the true reality, that true teaching and that true thing? What is it? What is your philosophy that helps you at night when you're scared and feeling vulnerable? What is it? What is it that you believe? That's going to be revealed, because you're going to face your vulnerabilities. You're going to realize that you're not in control, and you tell yourself something in response to not being in control. Your fear of death, your lack of control, your fear of not having control creates some story that you conjure up that you're devoted to. How is it really working out for you? I'm just asking. Notice that as we get closer to the full moon. And if it ain't something that's comforting you or helping you go deeper, because again, when it's a good story, not even when it's a good story, but when it's a great teaching and it's connected to a guru and a teaching and a dharmic answer, do you know what happens? When all that intensity starts and everybody's going bonkers, you're that much more devoted. You're coming from that much more depth. All of that thing that everybody's spinning out on, you're centering and going, ah. And yes, you're affected by it as well, but you're also pulled into a deeper center of devotion. Not emotion, devotion. Emotions come and go. Happy, sad, good, bad. Not that. Devotion, which is, I couldn't love this anymore. I love this being. I love this teaching. I love existence. I feel the truth and wisdom and devotion and bhakti in my heart. And if you're connected to something like that, it's transcendence. It's transcendent. Because things are going to get vulnerable. We're going to feel vulnerable. We're going to feel out of sorts as we get closer to this full moon, this eclipse. I'm telling you, watch it. Watch and see what happens in the next few days. And notice how you get triggered, and notice what you fall back on. Oh, it's the what? What is it? Oh, it's just the what? What do you come up with when your security is threatened, when your safety structure is threatened, when your stability, when your Taurus, all the stuff you think you got, all your money, your possessions, your family, all the stuff that you got, when that gets threatened, what do you say? What do you come up with when you're afraid of losing it all? Does it make you more devoted? Does it make you more loving? Does it make you more respectful, more honoring? Or does it just, do you spin out on sort of pathological, craziness? Me, it's half and half. And when I get into the pathological craziness, which I do, I'll okay, all right, I can only take so much of it. And then I have to stop looking at everything and just close the eyes and get into that place of devotion. Because I've been doing it a long time, it's not as hard. It doesn't take as long. I can get into it. Doesn't mean it's easy. And it's also why you'll never have the love for any person that you have for your guru. Because they've given you something that no person can, which is a connection to your own soul, your own heart. It's transcendent because you're transcendent, but you don't know it. Once you know it, you never forget it because it's an experience that you have, and then you're just never able to express the gratitude that there was a being that showed up, or a teaching that showed up, if it's not a guru in a body, a teaching that showed up, or something that you came into that so connected you to that source of life. It's just nothing but gratitude for that being. That's devotion. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. And as I said, you can go to that. You can get the 2020 Rahu Ketu 2020 web class if you want. It's free. If you haven't watched it yet, you should really watch it. Watch it and hear me talk about what's going to be happening when Rahu goes through Gemini and how it's going to show us the truth behind things, and it's going to reveal And it is. It's been revealing the truth. And again, the truth is we don't know what's going on. That's actually the truth. Maybe disappointing truth, but that's the one. We never did, right? Okay. So anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of the weekend, and share this with others if you think it'll help them. And you take care.